I'm really happy that we can come together as a group in person and start this conversation or continue from February and start to think about what's possible with the proposal that we are talking about here. So I want to talk about how important it is to me that you feel listened to. I've had dozens of conversations. I've had a couple of meetings. I spoke with Brentford over the weekend, and I've heard what you said, and I also heard what you said in February, last February. When we met, we talked about the proposal. Do I need to take a go? Or? Sorry. AV issues. So what we talked about is still true. We have an 18-acre park with 80 years of shared history. We have an ad hoc agreement that's long-term, but something that exists between the two townships. So currently, we share the permitting and maintenance. And again, this is all information we talked about before, but Lower Merion controls the fields for baseball and softball after school in the spring and fall. Haverford and Lower Merion split time on the evenings and weekends. So what would change with this proposal from the school district? The after-school use in the spring by Black Rock Middle School would be swapped out with current fields that are being used. Buses would not be allowed to park anywhere in the township. It would be drop off and pick up only. That is a change in that there will probably be fewer cars because a bus will come with I would assume all of the kids after school, and they're encouraging kids to take the bus home. So in theory, that might even make for less traffic. And we would also get a capital contribution from Lower Merion School District of $275,000 specifically allocated for community resources at Polo Field. It's a one-time contribution. So the use of the fields would be the same as it is now. There shouldn't be any material impact to people who live near the field. I know that flooding is a concern. I know that trash and maintenance is a concern. I know that the lack of community space is something that's been talked about. And I know that there's a concern about structures on the field. This plan does not put any structures on the field whatsoever, and that has not been part of our discussion. So the tentative agreement that I'd like to share with you tonight, oh, yes. So the proposal, again, I'll go through. So the proposal is for Lower Merion School District to use the baseball and softball fields at Polo Field starting in spring 2024 for the months of April, May, and June for practices and games for 2 teams. After school, Monday through Friday, there's no other sports being considered. There's no change to the intensity of use, and there's no change to evening or weekend use. There's to be no structures, no lights, no sound systems, and I think most importantly, since as part of the agreement, we would transfer ownership to Haverford Township, we would be able to ultimately make the decision about what happens on the fields. That doesn't exist now.
Is Black Rock Middle School the new middle school that has been built Lower Merion Township out on
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Thank you. I just and how many students does it have?
Just about that.
We want to get to everyone's questions, and so I don't want to speak too long. Was that the last slide? Okay, so the way we do it now is we permit the fields 50-50 and we maintain the fields jointly. The use of the fields would be the same as it is now. I'm happy to talk a little further if folks have questions, and I think that you will, about potential improvements and what those could be. Let's get to the questions and sort of attack them, in categories. And I know that Brentford brought a few questions that they want to share as well. do you want to say anything before we just go to questions? Okay, we're all here to answer and thank you so much.
I think Laura's gonna stay here and we'll hand the mic off right here. Is that, so
Okay,
that everybody can hear your
I'm
questions?
just gonna introduce the Brentford question
That sounds
people,
great.
and I'm starting with the question, so, you want me to,
Yeah,
or
just,
do you want me to stand?
there's fine. Yeah, if you want to just turn around
Well, I
and
don't
face.
have my back.
That's what I meant.
So, my name is Kathy Case. I'm the chair of the Brentford Polo Field Committee, which is a subset of the Brentford Civic Association. Laura graciously agreed to let us try to go first because we've collected questions from all of you, hundreds of questions, and tried to put them in some categories and to have 4 people from the Civic Association, 2 of the members of the Polo Field Committee and 2 of them not, ask those questions so you don't have to listen to me the whole time. And the Polo Field Committee was formed in 2019 at the request of Andy Lewis, shortly after we reconstituted the Civic Association. I wound up being chair because I've lived next to the polo field for 43 years. I guess that's it, or because I'm just known to be obstreperous, I'm not sure why, but in any case, as you know about the polo field, it's been used often, different ways since about the 1950s. A few years after it was passed on to us from the Polo Field Playfield Association, Bryn Mawr Playfield Association. But sports were different then. I'm not a sports historian, but there was kind of baseball and certainly not soccer a lot, and there was not lacrosse, and every field everywhere throughout the country now has experienced the kind of exponential growth of usage that we've seen in the polo field as well. I mean, I deliberately bought a house there because I thought I had a park in my backyard. And for years, that's what it seemed like. It just wasn't much usage going on. Now, that is not the case. The polo field currently is, according to our schedules that Brian Barrett and Donna both have and agreed upon, completely booked. There are exactly 3 slots that are not booked on the polo field, and I'm talking about the spring. The fall has its own problems, but that's not our issue here. So my role now is to try to get to the usage of the polo field. And then we will also have someone ask questions about traffic and buses and things like that. That'll be Jake Swan, who's the president of the Brentford Civic Association. And then someone will ask questions about the what alterations are proposed, including those for the PIA compliance. And that will be Jacques Cachdel, who's a long-term resident of the field and spends quite a bit of time on it. And then we have some questions about the terms of the long-term agreement. So those are kind of the 4 categories. And we'll try to get through these as quickly as possible and hope that everybody can hear the answers to these questions. I'm not interested particularly in going into the past, but really looking at the future of this proposal. So this is the schedule for the spring polo field. Comes from our township, but it includes both townships. So those red X's are the only 3 spots on the polo field that are not booked for the spring. And those are 3 spots that have been assigned to Haverford Township. They mutually agree who's going to schedule what spots on the field. And I'm mostly talking about baseball right now. There are other issues with the other fields. As those of us who live near the field know, even though there are only 5 fields that are now permitted by either township, there are in reality about 7 fields out there. People spray paint their own fields on there. There are all sorts of groups that play on there that do not go through either township. The Ultimate Frisbee group comes to mind. And we always see, there was somebody playing soccer there last week. They didn't have a permit from either township. So the issue is, there's a field, let's go play on it. And so not all the usage is on this sheet. In fact, quite a bit of it is not. So even so, the biggest user by far of the field right now is the Lower Merion Little League. They have the slots go from 3 to 5:30, and they go from 6 to dusk, whatever dusk is defined as. usually about 8:30 in the spring. So each day on the softball and baseball fields, there are those slots to be filled. As you know, what BlackRock has requested is the slot from 3 to 5:30. That slot is currently occupied by the Shipley School and St. Coleman, as John Newman, the Catholic school that's in Haverford Township, actually. And they share usage of the field in that slot. They will be asked to find another field. In fact, Shipley's already been asked to find another field. In fact, they've been assigned another field. And they've been using it for quite a few years. The Lower Merion Little League has been using the field for 15 years. They have the field completely on the weekends when public schools do not traditionally play. And they also have that twilight period when public schools also do not traditionally play. Haverford Township does not use those baseball and softball fields very much. Until 5 years ago, they really didn't use them at all. And now our Little League, Haverford Township Little League, has 2 of the dusk slots scheduled. Whether they are going to use it or not, we don't know. Sometimes people schedule just in case. And also a group that I have no idea what they are, the Haverford Recreation Department softball group. I'm not sure what that is, but in any case, that's what this chart shows. I'm not going to get into the soccer fields, but let's just say there are 2 soccer leagues, Lower Merion and Haverford Township, and they pretty much dominate use of the soccer fields, other than a group called the Gales, who play a very bizarre game I don't understand. In any case, that's the current usage, completely full. And on weekends, because the Little Leagues play one game sequentially after another, according to Wally Orloff, who's their president, they arrive by cars, they leave by cars. All of these other groups all arrive by cars. Shipley uses cars, and their opponents occasionally use buses. So some of the buses you've seen there are probably an opponent of the Shipley School. Shipley School uses the field. Their season, as I think was up here, runs from March to the end of May. And in total, they play during that time 3 to 5 games, according to their athletic director. It's ancillary use. Their varsity teams all play at Shipley, and this is for middle school. So it's very lightly used between those two entities. And they don't have too many observers. I mean, fans and things like that coming to it. So that's the piece that we're talking about, the 3 to 5:30 bracket. So our questions were, what is BlackRock going to do with that bracket? BlackRock actually has 4 teams. There are 2 softball teams, 7th grade and 8th grade. There are 2 boys baseball teams, 7th grade and 8th grade. They play in the Central League. I'm assuming, and this is my first question, they will also practice on that field. Is that correct? So they will be using it for practices, and they will be using it for Central League home games, because they don't have any other field to use. So I assume that the Central League home game, so that's correct, the home games. So looking at the Central League, at the BlackRock schedule, which they have up online for 2023, am I correct that middle school Central League games are pretty much the same year to year? In other words, you have to pay a certain number of schools, and I mean, to be in the Central League, you have to play Radnor and Haverford and TE and the other schools in the Central League, right?
So I will try my best to answer your question, but.
Yeah. Do you want to use this?
I just had knee surgery. It's gonna take-
Oh, my goodness. Empathetic. I had it myself. Okay.
Peter Lee, on the Lower Merion School Board. Can you hear me?
That's it. You just use the mic a little better.
Just gotta be close.
Yeah.
So
I can't answer your specific questions, which are, because I'm not sure what you're looking at, but I can tell you about the expected use. So there are gonna be four,
The black box.
right, but I can't see it. So what I'm just gonna do is describe the usage we expect, which is, so the season will run early March until late May. It will end before Memorial Day. There will be 4 teams playing 7th and 8th grade baseball, 7th and 8th grade softball. The teams will practice and play there. We expect about 5 or 6 games per team. There won't be any stacking, meaning like if the 8th grade boys are playing on the baseball field, the 7th grade boys won't be on the field that day. Similarly, if there's a game day and one of the softball teams is playing, the other softball team won't be playing. We do anticipate there will be some days where both fields will have games, meaning like there will be a girls softball game and a boys baseball game on the same day. So 12 total baseball games, 12 total softball games. Some of them will overlap. So I would anticipate, I don't know, on average, probably 18 days of games. When they practice, there are 2 diamonds. You can see them up on the screen. So up on the north, or it's not north, but up on the top of the screen, I think that is north, you'll see the baseball diamond. At the bottom, you'll see the softball diamond. So they're already existing. We don't anticipate making any changes to that. And in fact, you know, like the backstop already exists. We're not going to make any modifications to that. We won't be adding any dugouts or even like shelters for the you know, the high school kids have a player shelter, but the middle schools do not. So, you know, we don't anticipate making any changes. There will be, when there aren't games, the kids will be practicing. So all 4 teams will be on the field, sharing the field, practicing when there's not a game. Sure.
Say 12 softball games, that's 8th grade softball, you did 12 for 7th grade.
No, total,
That's not
that's,
according to your schedule.
well, because you're looking at potentially away games too, right?
No,
Like,
no. I'm talking about all games altogether,
well,
12 games in this season.
in terms of home, yes, but some of them will be away games. So in terms of home games, the 8th grade girls, the 7th grade girls, the 7th grade boys, the 8th grade boys, each team will have 5 or 6 home games. So at most, so what we're really looking like total, you're looking at 10 to 12 total softball games for both teams, inclusive, at home.
So,
Or 10 to 12 baseball games inclusive at home.
so according to the 2020 schedule, Black Box, there are in fact 22 games. Right, that's about 5.
Right, yeah, between,
22 home games.
right, but some of them are concurrent. Because
Yes, so here's what, let me see if I can hold this up. It's the months, I mapped it out. The red boxes are a single game on the field. The brown boxes are going to be 2 teams on the field, but essentially homes.
okay,
So this is BlackRock will be 1 team, Radnor or TE or something. So there'll actually be in the red boxes 2 teams coming to the field. On the brown days, there'll be 4 teams. Right? So that's 22 home games, and that is, and it's spread out over 17 days. So some days will be 2.
right, so that's exactly what I said. Like on average would probably be 18 game days where there's 1 or both of the fields
So
being
my
used.
question is, assuming that 2024, they had playing in the Central League, which, as many of you may know, I don't have the money, so. Let me see if I can. Why don't you come up
Here, I'll
with
bring it.
the same-
Well, we should probably be together.
Kathy, Kathy, would you mind coming over? There's an empty seat right here.
athletic attorney, I had mine replaced. Okay, so, let's see if we can agree on this so we can understand what the actual usage is. There would be in a typical Central League season for BlackRock, assuming the teams will be formed and everything, and with 1,000 students, you probably, can you hear better now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be loud. So you'll have teams, there'll be 22 home games on the Polo field. Some days there'll be 2 games. Over a 17-day period, and the current schedule, it actually begins on April 14th and runs to something like May 18th on the schedule that's posted on the BlackRock School website. So that will mean on some days of the week, according to that schedule, there will be 4 games in that week in a schedule that's compressed. I understand private schools have a longer period of time, but the public schools do not. So those will be days that buses will be arriving with both BlackRock students and students from whoever they're playing, whether that's Radnor or Haverford or whatever. So, and those days there will be 2 buses arriving and dropping off students. So I guess my question is, how does that not be more usage than Shipley playing 3 or 4 games spread out over 3 months? I mean, it has to be more usage.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on what the usage is. I'm not familiar with how much Shipley's using it, or maybe Andy.
So I can also be loud. This is good. You can keep the microphone.
Yeah, I wonder if the Zoom people won't.
Oh, okay. I'll run over here. So when you're comparing BlackRock to only Shipley, that's one of the users of the field, right? There's also St. John Coleman Newman that uses the field. I don't know how many games, but I know they use the field as well. 2 teams at St. John Coleman Newman.
2 teams. And
then my understanding is also gaps are filled in by other school, like is it Torah Academy, or
Nope.
was there another?
No,
So it's those 2. So there are multiple teams. You're only comparing it to one of the schools. The other thing, what I've understood, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong on this, is at full capacity, there is a 7th grade boys baseball team, an 8th grade boys baseball team, a 7th grade girls softball team, and an 8th grade girls softball team. That doesn't always happen. Right? If there is enough interest in a year, my understanding, and Donna, you've worked with the athletic directors a lot, is some teams aren't always filled out from all of the schools. So while there are 1,000 people at the school, that's 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. 5th and 6th grade aren't part of it. So you're talking 500 students, half are boys, half are girls. So you're kind of, that number of 1,000 students doesn't guarantee that you will have 4 teams every year. So that kind of.
Well, I guess I'd ask, how did you assess the Shipley uses? Because I don't know if the athletic director is here today, but I did speak to him.
I know Donna works with that.
Yes.
And Brian does.
Until 2 weeks ago, they didn't even know about this proposal. And they also have sent me information what their usage is, which was very little. It's only middle school too. And Newman has 256 students in the entire school. So it's hard to believe that there's going to be a lot of, that's 1 through 8. So I did not have time to get to the Newman school and find out, but
Kathy, I think Donna has some information on.
they play at least once or twice a week on that. That's how it's split. Neither one of the schools used it on Friday.
I can answer the question with regards to the Shipley use. I have their permit for application for 2023, this upcoming season. They've requested a total of 12 dates. They usually ask for some additional dates in addition to that. They work closely with St. Newman John Coleman to schedule additional dates as necessary, and they're flexible. So St. John Coleman is on the field other than these 12 dates that have been requested by the Shipley School for 2023. They're pretty similar. With regards to the ability to field teams, that you speak of the Central League, there's Welsh Valley Middle School and Bala Cynwyd Middle School. Haverford Middle School is part of the Central League as well. So there will be Haverford students playing versus those teams. I know Ballackinwood Middle School probably won't be fielding teams this year, so that's actually one less game. The seasons vary from year to year. You can't count number of games, number of players. It's not a static number. It constantly ebbs and flows, and interest peaks and interest wanes, and some teams just don't field teams. So we end up having a lot of gaps in a season. We're talking worst case scenario with the number of games here, if every school fields a team.
Okay, so if you're saying, because I didn't get the Newman statistics since I only had a week to gather these, and I didn't get a chance to talk to the athletic director there, whether they're able to field a team. They don't have very many students, and I don't know their usage, but we don't see buses arriving from them either. So what you're saying is that the Shipley and the Newman usage will be more than Black Rock Middle School. And that's why you're saying it'll be a benefit to us because there'll be less usage.
What I'm saying is I can't say the exact same usage should be pretty close. We're talking middle school kids after school. We're not looking at, playoffs, PIAA playoffs. There's 2 schools currently using it, a total of 3 teams using it. We're going to 4 teams with varying schedules. So it's constantly changing. St. John Newman used to have a softball team that played there. They've combined teams with another Catholic school, if I've gotten that information correct. So it's constantly moving. There's not a way we're not comparing things. It's literally impossible.
Don, I think Brian wants to.
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
add one more comment. At the parochial schools, you don't actually have to go to the school to play on the team. You just have to be in the parish. So if you go to Haverford Middle School and you're in the St. John Coleman Newman Parish, you can play on their team. So
Yeah.
it's the 256 is not the pool that they're drawing from.
I understand that. My boys played for our Mother of Good Counsel when they had a team, so I understand that. So here's my question. So if maybe it's equal usage, maybe it's more, but Newman and Shipley have been asked to leave that spot on the polo field, correct? I understand Shipley's been assigned to Vernon Young Field. Is that the name of the field for 2024?
Yeah, when we first came up with the ideas of what the possibilities were, the first mandate that were given to both Parks and Recreation departments were that the teams that are currently on Polo need to have a home before this discussion even goes any further. So yes, we were taking into consideration both Shipley and St. John Newman before we even ventured down the road. So yes, we don't know the definites on 2024 yet, but they definitely will have a place to play.
Okay, well, according to Justin Cooper, who's the athletic director at Shipley, they've already been assigned to Vernon Young Field for 2024. And I assume that St. Coleman Newman would go with them, or if they're a thing. So if they're
Don has been in touch with us. Great communication. He told John Newman's covered this year.
okay, so they're going to be on the polo field this year.
Yes.
Newman,
No, we'll be on polo this year.
2023.
Next year,
Even if there's renovations being done to the fields, which we'll get to, that's going to be difficult. Anyway, so my question is this, and the question is, why not have Black Rock play at Vernon Young? It's in Lower Merion Township. Yeah, well, if Shipley can play there, yeah, who's got it?
So there is a question of where the schools are located and how long it takes to get to various fields and various locations. Black Rock Middle School, for those who don't know, are in Villanova on Montgomery Avenue, kind of very end of the very western end of Lower Merion Township. Vernon Young Field is on the other end of the township. The trip to get the students from one place to another did not make sense. So that's why.
It's in South Ardmore.
Right, South Ardmore is on one end is kind of further from Black Rock, a lot further from Black Rock Middle School than Polo Field is.
Well, it's on the other side of Haverford College, it's where that field is. It's not very far from the polo field.
Correct, but
Yeah.
it's beyond.
So it's about, what, a quarter mile longer?
I don't know. I haven't measured out the
Right.
distance, but
So it's 2.2 something miles from Black Rock to the polo field, I
Okay.
believe. And so this would be 2 point, a little bit more. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I-
All right.
So the way.
Yeah, did you? Okay. In the baseball program? Well, we're not talking about soccer here though, because that's not a problem.
Yes, soccer.
Yeah.
Sort of missing the conversation, but, and I know a lot of folks are, we need to move on beyond the argument of whether this is going to happen, because you can make that argument for sure. The question is whether we can address the questions about the field in the future.
Okay, so here are the other questions about usage, and someone else will talk about transportation. But I assume there are spectators coming to these games. It's hard to believe that Black Rock would be playing Haverford Middle School and there wouldn't be people attending the games.
Kathy, can Peter answer that?
Sure.
There's actually very little spectator traffic for middle school sports in any sport. For lower Merion sports, there are very few parents that are coming to middle school sports for any sport.
Is that true of Haverford Township?
That is definitely true for Haverford.
For middle school sports, there's very few spectators. I mean, you're talking about not for middle school. For middle school, you can count on one hand the number of parents that come to middle school games.
How about to pick up their kids?
We're going to encourage the kids to take the bus, and actually the buses will decrease traffic because we anticipate all of the teams to be on the bus. There won't be parking in the township. They'll pull up on Railroad. They'll drop off the kids. It should take 3 or 4 minutes, and then they'll go park, and then they'll come back and pick them up.
Well, someone else will get to that thing. Yeah.
They're gonna park in Lower Merion Township.
They're going to park in Lower Merion Township across from
They will not park in Haverford.
So I think
across
that's,
from the post office in Bryn Mawr.
That was the side you're rolling on. They park in the-
Across from the post office in Bryn Mawr at that parking lot.
so that's a good segue into the transportation issue.
Yes.
There's a parking lot across from.
So Jake? So Jake Swan, he's tried to compile the transportation questions. He's the president of the Brentford Civic Association, and we'll segue into that from the usage.
Yes, and thank you all for being here and spending time with us this evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jake Swan. I'm the president of the Brentford Civic Association. The Brentford Civic Association, the civic association that represents the area around the polo field.
Just bring the light up.
Is this okay? Okay. Yeah, so the community does have some questions about transportation. These mostly have to do with buses, how many there will be, where they will be dropping off kids, picking them up, if they will be staying at the township. Some of these questions have been answered. There were also questions about car traffic. From what I understand, parents are going to be discouraged from picking up their kids. And from what we understand, spectators, there are very few spectators at the games. These were concerns for us, mostly because 4 games, you think about how it is on the weekends, 4 games going on, 4 teams playing at the same time, but the field would be overwhelmed. But if there are not spectators, that is fine.
Louder.
The last question is about maintenance. The polo field has been maintained with a very light touch historically. And we are wondering if in the new use agreement, if this will be addressed in any way. I guess this is a question for Lower Merion and Brian.
I think for the Park and Rec department, or
Why don't I start with the transportation?
Yeah.
So in terms of transportation, so we anticipate during game days, it would be 2 to 4 buses that would drop off and pick up. Because if there was one game happening, it would be one Lower Merion bus and one opponent bus. If there are 2 games happening, it would be 2 Lower Merion buses and 2 opponent buses.
Right, and where would this be happening?
So this, the drop off will happen on Railroad, all the way to the bottom of the map, near the softball diamond. It'll be on the road. They'll stop. The kids will get off the bus. Should take 3 or 4 minutes per bus. And they'll immediately drive to the parking lot, across from Ludington Library in Lower Merion. They'll park there. And when the game is over, they'll come and pick up the kids in the same location.
Okay.
And on practice days, there'll be just Lower Merion kids, so we would anticipate 2 buses,
Regular school buses.
regular school buses, same protocol. They'll drop off down near the softball diamond. The kids will, the arm will come off, the kids will disembark 3 or 4 minutes. They'll immediately go park across from Ludington Library, and then they'll only come back to pick the kids up. There'll be no parking in Haverford Township. There'll be no idling in Haverford Township.
The opponent's buses also, they will be required to leave.
We will instruct them to do that, same thing.
How would that be posted if they say the state?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The question is, how will it be enforced if the buses, for the opposing team stay at the field and decide not to follow the instructions to park at the location in Bryn Mawr? And the answer to that is, we will have to incorporate something into the agreement that addresses that. That's number one. And number two, if they're parked illegally, obviously the police will have to enforce that.
Haverford Township Police,
In Haverford Township, if they're parked illegally, they will have to enforce illegal parking.
currently no parking on Railroad. There's a nursing home there, fire trucks would be able to turn into.
Can I answer that question? Can we ask a question about the fire trucks?
Fire trucks.
Okay, so, I looked at the site today. I'm very familiar with it, obviously. I'm also a fire chief with Brookline Fire Company. With the school bus parked there, it's only for 3, 4, 5 minutes tops. It'll be out of there. If there is a fire or fire trucks have to get in there, that bus will be instructed to move immediately. I do not see a problem with that. I want to answer that question, so.
Repeat the question.
So there's a question about why the buses aren't dropping off in the parking lot. Actually, the road, the driveway to enter that parking lot isn't wide enough to support a 72 passenger bus. Railroad Avenue is considerably wider. So it really is a safety issue. We wouldn't have buses going in and out of. Yeah.
I'm not hearing the question.
So someone's mentioning that the entry into the parking lot at Polo Field was expanded recently, and the answer was that that's private property.
That is correct. The entry to Polo Field is a shared driveway among 3 landowners, including the Polo Field.
Only 2, actually.
Thank you.
I don't want to.
Hold on. Let's slow down. I'm going to give this back to Commissioner Cavender for a moment.
Yeah, maintenance.
Yeah, the use and maintenance agreement, we have talked about this at length, but we haven't decided anything, so I can give you the sort of parameters that we're thinking. So as we talked in February, sometimes there are issues with maintenance of the field and the grass and mowing and making sure that the trash gets picked up. So what we'd like to do is incorporate into this new agreement some slightly boosted standards. And that's something that we really want to do all over the township. But really by digging into this and looking at it, we were able to see like, hey, there's some things we could improve on here. And this is an opportunity to do that. So I will let Brian and folks talk to the fields themselves, but what I was considering in the conversations that we had, the idea that especially during high growth months, for example, we might want to mow more. We should probably try to get another, edging in if we can. And these are all things that we are working on for our parks, including Polo. So does that answer a little bit? And I'll let Donna talk us up.
But, here I got check, on Tennessee, pregnant, all the way up our street, have to do them machines off, coming through our neighborhood. So that's a problem that's gotta be taken care of. No one drives up down the street, grass all like the car because grass, but that's gonna be taken care of too. That's real stop.
I don't know if Zoom heard the statement, but it was with regards to mowers that were driving on Penn Avenue after mowing the grass. The property, as far as a maintenance agreement that we are operating under currently, is Lower Merion Township takes care of the athletic fields. So basically from the upper 90-foot diamond with the grass infield across down to Railroad Avenue, we take care of the lawn in that area. Our guys pull into the lot with their tractors, mowers, and various equipment trailers, do their work and retrailer and leave. The lower portion from the ball diamond down to is it Drayton? Dayton, is Haverford Township maintenance crews. We have shared maintenance responsibilities around the edge twice a year. We have added on the athletic fields I can speak to. We have added the polo field to our ball field maintenance program. We did a soil test to determine what type of nutrients the fields need. We've added it to our annual program of providing those nutrients, aerating, reseeding, and overlaying. It is a constant battle. I'm not gonna lie, it takes a long time to get it back and rejuvenated because of the constant use, and that's with all of our parks and all of our park systems. It's constant chase, but it has been added to that up step of maintenance and care to try to regreen and regrass the lawn. So there's a lot of different moving parts to that, but we continue to make efforts and strive on that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
So can we move on then to the next set of questions, which Doc has? Thank you.
I hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
A lot of these questions that I have here.
Oh, could you introduce?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My name is Chuck Gatcherdell. I live on County Line Road next to the construction there. I've been there for 35 years. I walk on the field at least twice a day with my dog. And by the way, we can all go home. The dog owns the field, so it's all my dog. Oh, your dog. So in any event, my questions all have to do with possible alterations to the field, and I think that they've been answered. I just want to be sure about this. So let's get it on the record. This is why I asked this be recorded. We understand that the alterations, we were told this, and this could be wrong. So if it's wrong, you'll tell me. We were told that part of the deal with the field is that if BlackRock is going to use it, it has to meet PIAA standards, which is to say what is that? That's the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association. And we'd like to know what some of these standards are, what that would involve. And Mr. Lee, you've already said, and I'm asking for the record, no dugouts, no bleachers, field grading or leveling.
There might be some.
You bet. Anybody been by the baseball field lately? It's 4 inches of mud right by home plate. going out. It's a disaster. That's my dog. She won't even go on it.
And Sean said no shelter, want that on the record.
No shelters, yeah, that would be included in dugouts. I understand that for the age group that's going to be playing, if there were dugouts, the minimum length of the dugout would have to be 30 feet. That would be a hell of an alteration to what many of us consider a pretty neat ecosystem, right? I mean, that's what we're worried about, folks. We've got fox, we've got rabbits, we've got squirrels. This week we had a beautiful falcon in the field. We've had hawks. I mean, you name it. We've even had deer on the field. And it wouldn't take much to destroy all of that. There's a question at the back. Understand? I've seen a lower Merion truck, and you can see it as well. You can see evidence of it because they drive all over the field when they pick up the trash. And there are gouges around the field after they've picked up the trash. Don't take my word for it. Take a walk there on trash day. Right? So, yes, please. So, oh, no lights, right? Right. You know why these questions are coming up? Because in Lower Merion Park Plan that you put out between 2013 and I think it was 2019, though you note that you're afraid to commit to something you don't own, you go on to describe a field with dugouts, lights, bleachers, I mean, you name it. It turns into a completely different environment. So that's why we wanted to get it on the record that there's none of that if it happens. Okay, next step. Most of the people who live around the polo field, they don't play games. They go there to walk. They go there for a quiet space, walk themselves, walk their dogs. Kids play on the field. By the way, we have a terrible goose problem this time of year. I hate to say Canada goose because I'm Canada originally, but it's true. There's goose shit all over the place, including the basketball court. You couldn't use the basketball court if you tried, right? That's terrible. What are you going to do? Shoot him? No. Yeah.
Well, now that you bring that up, what are they going to use for restrooms?
Oh, there's a big problem. And some kids use my backyard. And yours, yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna put 50 kids on the field at a time, and, boys, girls, whatever.
And we also have a.
Oh, we sure do.
So why don't we let this gentleman finish his comments and then folks can have their comments.
Okay.
All right, well, let me get to the, so a number of people who were at a meeting recently, I'm reflecting their views, asked me to say the following. Neighbors feel strongly that before any alterations, if any, are made, a long overdue park plan, including drainage, turf maintenance, and recommendations by a professional arborist, should be developed and presented to the neighborhood. If this is possible, planting fruits and trees in there, you say, well, so what? Do you know that most communities have stopped planting perilous fruit trees because they break in the wind? They're dangerous and they're dirty. We don't obviously have people who understand the art of tree planting, right? Although there was a wonderful effort made when Andy was still alive, and they planted trees along the County Line Road there, that's by the sister's house. That was nice. But the selection of tree types is very important in the park. A lot of us would like to see more oaks, maples, hardwoods. But anyway, finally, sorry. Yes, we want to see a park plan.
It sounds like you're looking for a master plan for the park or just a site plan for the park. That's what Commissioner Cavanagh is asking you.
I'm asking for a site plan that would include, as I said, drainage, which is a huge problem. Last week, you could not walk on the western side of the park. That's the Railroad Avenue. You couldn't walk there. It's 4 inches of water everywhere. The drainage, turf maintenance, it's in deplorable condition right now. Of course, it hasn't been mowed lately. People don't typically mow in January, even if we've had the warmest January on record ever. And recommendations by a professional arborist with regard to what trees would be most useful. You know, they put in, it's a nice thought, a good intention, they put in 2 new blue benches. Blue benches. They're metal. You ever sit on a metal bench in July? And they put them miles apart and no shade. Who's thinking? Somebody to think. Right? So that's really all I have, except that I was speaking with the commissioner earlier, and I want to put a rumor to bed once and for all. There was a rumor going around that Commissioner Cavender assures me this is not the case. There was a rumor going around that part of the $275,000 could be used to cut down 100 trees on the polo field and plant arborvitae along Penn Street and possibly along Dayton.
And railroad.
And possibly railroad. That's not true. All right, so we don't have to worry about that. And by the way, when you talk about arborvitae, there are several varieties, and it makes a big deal which one you choose. Okay, so
I just have a quick response.
Thank you, Jacques. I am really glad you brought up all of those points. I think it's really important, yes, that we are able to look at this if we move forward holistically and think about what the park needs. And that's why this money would be designated specifically for the community. So yes, I mean, if arborvitae aren't the right things to plant, then that's what we want to understand. So, and we're not planning to take any trees out whatsoever. We only want to add to the trees. So yes, I think that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to do. And I think that's great guidance that, you know, we'll put together a project plan. We'll look at where the flooding is down on Railroad. And when we look at the stormwater management plan that we're hoping to put down there, then we will be able to assess the best way to do it. I mean, that's how I see it. So yes, we need trees. We need a border along Penn Street. What it looks like is a conversation that we can have. And so, yeah, I support a better looking border on Penn Street and planting some trees in strategic places that are going to benefit neighbors. So that, again, is the conversation that we will continue to have. We're not going to have it all tonight, but we want to continue. So, and I know Lower Merion may have to go at some point. I'm happy to stay as long as possible, but let's do the questions for them first, I think.
I have one thing before we go any further.
Sure.
I'm gonna give, let me,
Agreement.
Read that in the mainline Times, in Philadelphia, or we're blindsided by it.
Sure. So
Why are we having this meeting when you've already decided?
there's no decision that's been made. And as soon as we came to a point where we could share what we were talking about, that's what we did. It was almost.
Every one of these people is speaking for it. Every person up there is speaking for it. You agree between Polo Merion and Haverford Township. Agreed. Came to an agreement.
Not in.
Well, it's not, so there's no agreement. Yeah, there's no agreement. However, before we could talk to the neighbors about it, we needed to agree on some parameters.
Can we see a landscape of what it's gonna be?
Well, I think that's what Jacques was asking, is whether we could come up with a site plan, but I can sort of point things out here, I think.
And I wanna see what it's gonna look like. Good job.
All right, well, we can work on a design, but what we're generally thinking is some border along Penn Street to sort of make that border a little more consistent without blocking neighbors' yards or views or access to the park. We are also looking at rain gardens, stormwater management, sort of down near this end where there tends to be a lot of flooding. That's what I learned from you all, and that's what we took in and are trying to incorporate into this plan. And then we're talking about a seating area for the community, including sort of a nice tribute to Andy Lewis with some trees and a place for folks to sit in the neighborhood. Right now, there's not a lot of seating for you all that use the park every day. So we talked about doing some seating, some trees, maybe a small shelter for kids to use. We're not talking about a big structure, and it would be something that the community would be able to use. And then we talked about some additional trees. There were questions and things that I heard about coverage on Dayton. So that's what the trees would be designated for. Where do we need tree coverage? So again, and I'll let Dave and Brian talk about the exact process, but that's where we sit down and say, hey, we have some money to plant some trees that are going to improve the way we experience the park. So we'll sit down and do that together. Tonight's not the night because we don't have an agreement. So what we want to do is talk with you about what we're thinking, how it might impact you, and then be able to talk through some of the details. So that's what.
We don't want this. We thought this was dead in the water. All of a sudden, last week, we started hearing about it in the paper. We started hearing about tentative. I don't know what
So there wasn't a way for us to communicate with the neighborhood without the media picking it up. So for that reason, we coordinated among ourselves, came up with agreed upon language that we all agreed upon. And then the media picked it up. We put out statements, announcements. And again, as soon as we had something to talk about, we scheduled the meeting and came to you. And we want to hear from you.
I have a big concern about traffic. I live on Old Lancaster Road. I've been there for 45 years. I've lost 3 cars, 1 accident, 2 cars. Haverford Township Police, if you want them to come and permit parking all around parks, and there really isn't any parking. If you want any police present, you have to call and ask them to come and take it to park. When we do have people coming in, a lot of it is the soccer, I think. They have big games, they'll park wherever, and they don't stand their route. It's pointed out that it's permit parking.
Absolutely, I hear you.
That's my big concern. And I'm not the only one that's hit on Old Lancaster. That road is so busy. So where are the buses coming into the area from, and where are they exiting from, are things that should be taken into consideration, especially that time of day.
Sure.
Because you've got Bryn Mawr Hospital and other businesses and all the doctor's offices are surrounding that area.
Sorry.
Leaving at that time of day.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have traffic set up.
Absolutely.
I worked on the Dayton building parking when they sold that building, and now it's been sold again, and we have to stay on top of it. That had landscaping, it was beautiful. It does not look like what they presented to us. So of course we're worried because we've got a lot of problems at that time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why John is here, Chief of Police, to talk specifically about that. And that's why they've been made aware that enforcement is a problem down there. And you do unfortunately have to call. But what we hope to do through this is, John's gonna be down there knowing when the problems are. One thing that we've learned is exactly when and where we have parking problems, and we can pay attention now, but I'll let him talk a little bit more about that.
Somebody have a question while I'm before I speak? We had met with Brentford Civic Association, I think last spring or fall, about some of the issues up in that area, as far as car speeding, because of a couple of schools were causing what were perceived to be traffic problems. We have addressed those dramatically. So I'm aware of what goes on up there. And yes, you do have to call. We have patrol cars that are always in the area. They're assigned districts, but they don't always see everything. And you know what? We try to be lenient sometimes because people do park, and a lot of times we end up ticketing neighbors who park in the wrong spot. But if there's a game going on, no matter where it is, if somebody calls and said they're parked illegally, we will address it and we will issue tickets. I promise you that. Listen,
can't cross full length of the road at 8.
I don't disagree with you. Traffic is bad all over. You know what? Everybody had one car 20 years ago and everybody has 2 and 3 cars. So traffic is bad throughout the township.
So we're in such a tight area, knowing we have such traffic, knowing that Railroad Avenue is certainly impacted, Dayton Road certainly impacted, that, Old Lancaster Road is impacted. Why on earth did they choose this place?
I'm not going to answer that question. I'm here to answer traffic questions.
And it is not your township.
All right, somebody had a question in the back. Yes, sir, please.
I
If you-
My question is, where are buses gonna go? They're going to Railroad Avenue, drop off at the party. This somebody just spoke to Thomas County Line Road. Terrible turn for buses. Trying to get. And the guy that turned down at the bottom and these were the terrible turn for buses. And as we all know, County Line Road has no sidewalks. There are people walking, self-included, the dog, the guys in there. Good place, public line. So where, what is that bus route? School, East Railroad Avenue, Railroad Avenue. People off.
So the question from the audience is concern about the specific route the buses will be taking when they drop kids off and pick them up. We'll work with the school district will work with Haverford Township Police to draw out the safest route through. I wouldn't anticipate it would be driving through the neighborhood. It would probably take the most direct route possible to Haverford Avenue and Lancaster Avenue and just make one loop.
County line. That's the most direct route.
Yeah, County Line is a narrow road. I've driven on that road a lot. Well, so like I said, we'll commit to working with the Haverford Township Police to map out the safest route and the most direct
The other
route.
buses will be coming from counties. I mean,
Right, but
we're gonna be able
we
to-
can give them instructions on exactly which route.
We have a group of questions. Lynn has been sitting there patiently.
Yeah,
that's good. Standing in me.
Feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello to everyone. My name is Lynn Elliott. I live on Polo Road. And I am going to take issue with the statement that Commissioner Cavender made that there would be no additional impact to the neighborhood because Polo Road, anyone who lives there knows you cannot exit onto Haverford Road without taking your life into your hands. So we all enter and exit via Railroad Avenue. Currently, there are no buses that come along Railroad Avenue and pick up or drop off. What you are proposing to do is absolutely an increase in use of our neighborhood streets for something that is going to tie up traffic that is already a problem, particularly in the 3 to 3:30 time zone, because the nursing home, I'm very glad you have the whole thing.
Bus down there, Rugby and Railroad.
Right, but these are not bringing large sports teams that all have equipment that are going to be pulling, getting students dropped off, picked up. They're gonna be blocking Railroad Avenue. Cars are not gonna be able to go back and forth. In the nursing home, they have shift change around 3 to 3:30 p.m. every day. Those cars go in and out of there all the time. This is going to be an absolute increase to the traffic in this neighborhood. You need to stay off of Railroad Avenue for your pickups and drop-offs. My suggestion to you is that you negotiate with Harkham College. That's a big parking lot. Your buses can go circling right around the parking lot in Harkham. There's a sidewalk all the way down to the polo field. It is entirely within Lower Merion Township. Your students can simply walk down to the field. Your buses can go back and forth along Montgomery Avenue and never enter our neighborhood. However, I am here to ask questions about this tentative agreement. but I had to address the statement that there will be no increase in the activity on the neighborhood streets, because that is absolutely not correct. So we actually have a long list. However, I'm only going to do a few because we're. Thank you, everyone. We are actually going to send a written list of all of our questions to both township solicitors. And for this lady who speaks about how we all objected, everyone who was on that Zoom call last February knows that every single resident was opposed to this proposal. And suddenly, as you say, it is sprung upon us as a done deal. So that's why all of us are here tonight. And we want to get some specifics about this agreement. The long list of questions will go to your township solicitors, but I have 5 questions that I would like answers to tonight. Number 1, when will the Brynford Civic Association be provided with a copy of the actual draft agreement, not just a summary?
Doesn't exist.
I know. When will it be done?
Well, so being a newbie, I'll lay out what I think and then you guys can fill in. So there isn't an agreement because there's no agreement. So we only have the outlines of a deal that we've all agreed to. So, but it's literally everything that is written is in my email. So, I'm not gonna stay unless it stays simple. So I mean, yeah.
You just all agree.
But
For your very words.
okay, yes, that's a good point. No, that is a fair point. He said, there is no agreement, but I said we all agreed. So that is fair. So we needed to talk about something that we could agree on and bring to the group. So that's what we've done. The reason we haven't drafted the agreement is because we're getting community feedback and hearing from you on what these concerns are. So this is the process, and I'll let you talk a little bit more.
So specifically, what was asked was not just seeing a draft of the summary, but actually seeing what the agreement is.
The
right?
detailed
The detailed agreement.
agreement.
And as Laura said, it doesn't exist. A detailed agreement does not exist at this point. Therefore, it can't be shared because there's nothing to be shared. Legally, the townships will have to approve these in public meetings. Before we do that, there's a process. They have to be presented, there has to be advertised, you have to go through certain steps. I know, Laura, as soon as we had come up with the parameters, the first thing she did was say, we need to schedule a meeting and send out the parameters. And I fully expect, and I know we will do that, and I expect Laura to do the same exact thing as soon as it's drafted, which my hope is it is sometime, my guess is March. I don't know exactly whether it'll be late February, early April, depending on how quickly the solicitors work together. As soon as it is drafted, I fully expect Laura will share that with you. We will share it with our constituents as well. There is, that as soon as that's done, we will be ready to share.
Number 2, the current ownership document states clearly that the field must be used as a playfield, playground, or park in perpetuity. Will the same restrictions be added to the deed when Haverford Township takes full ownership? If not, what will prevent the township from one day selling the land to a developer to generate tax revenue?
This is a quick answer. The deed and the purpose behind the deed will transfer. And we will run it like we run any other park. We're not gonna develop the land.
Put the same wording in your new covenant.
I mean, I can't Well, we put the same wording in. The solicitor's not here, but yes, yes, that is the idea.
Good, we wanted that on the record, thank you. Will this agreement be between Haverford Township and Lower Merion Township, or between Haverford Township and Lower Merion School District?
So Haverford Township's agreement is with Lower Merion Township. We share the permits to the field with Lower Merion. I support that relationship. I think that relationship should continue. That's why we're continuing to share the use. The agreement that we're going to make, if we make it, is for the permits that Lower Merion already uses to be permitted to the school district. So the school district would then need to abide, just like all of our other field users, to the standards that we have set for the field. So in that way, there's accountability because we have a relationship with the other township that requires them to hold all users of the field, the school district being one, accountable to the standards that we have, that we're setting.
Thank you. What is the expiration date or time limit for this agreement?
So the idea will be that it's renewable. We have made that a condition, that it be renewable. I think the question would be the length of the lease. I don't think it makes sense for it to be a yearly lease because you have to go through seasons. You would have, I mean, we don't have any desire or need to kick Lower Merion out. And what we want to do is make the standards appropriate for all field users and hold users accountable to that. So that is that's our agreement.
So. So for the past 50 years, 60, whatever it's been, the two townships have worked together to permit the fields, to maintain the fields. The expectation is that that will continue for the foreseeable future. There's not, and this isn't a 10-year agreement, a 20-year agreement, and then it ends. This is a continuation of how the two townships have operated the use and the maintenance of the fields. And the idea is to continue that for, as long as it works together between the two townships. The biggest difference there are two big differences that I see between how it's done now and how it would go in the future. One is that the actual ownership of the field would transfer over to Haverford Township. So if Lower Merion's not doing our part, if we are, ultimately Haverford has control as the owner of the field if we are not in Lower Merion contributing our share. The second big part is we're formalizing something that's been done informally. So right now, we've kind of worked together. The two Parks and Rec departments have worked together well. But if you get new Parks and Rec directors in, eventually, maybe Brian will get to retire, maybe he won't. But when they do, you don't know what the next Parks and Rec director will do. We're counting on having two very good directors and very good staff beyond just the directors. We're counting on that currently for maintaining this relationship. What we're doing now is documenting how it should work. So those are the big differences. In terms of Lower Merion School District's use, they are not a party to the agreement between the two townships. This agreement, formal or informal through the years, has always been through the two townships. The school district hasn't been part of it. Lower Merion School District has had the right to permit half of the use of the fields. Haverford permitted the other half. Currently,
I'm sorry. Would you say that again?
Sorry,
Did
I'm
you
sorry.
say
I said it wrong.
School district?
I misspoke. I apologize. I misspoke. Lower Merion Township has permitted half of the use of the fields. Haverford Township has permitted the other half. In our permitting, we have permitted to Shipley and St. Coleman, John Newman. We have done that. We are switching who we are permitting our half to Lower Merion School District. That isn't changing the agreement. That isn't changing the terms of the agreement because that's within what Lower Merion Township, what Lower Merion Township is permitting. It's not changing who's party to the agreement. It's not changing how much Lower Merion Township gets to permit. It's not increasing our usage of the field. It's changing what we are doing is changing who we are permitting our portion of the fields. So that hopefully that helps. Yeah. Okay. So
legal agreement, covers the field stay. It is not even current.
So
The Haverford doesn't even use the baseball field.
so
Never will be able to.
I'm gonna pass this on to, to the Parks and Recs.
The permitting changes from year to year. 5 years ago, we permitted the middle of the fields to lacrosse from St. Coleman John. So depending on the requests that we get, that's how we permit the fields. So if somebody asked for Friday night, like you showed on the thing, although a lot of people don't want Friday nights, that would be a consideration. If some of our groups asked for it, one of the groups that's currently using it asked for it, that we would probably give it to them if it was open. So it's more a matter of who's asking for the field on any given year.
But look at the usage thing that you said,
Yes.
count up the number of slots that are available. Most of them, Lower Merion does. Little League uses it all day on Saturday. And all morning on Sunday.
And if we had other users asking for it, we would work with Donna and we would work that out. Just like if she has a new user, would ask us. Sometimes St. Coleman John Newman asked us for a field, and sometimes they asked Donna for a field, depending on field availability.
Nobody else will ever be able to use that slot set, right?
No, that does not mean that. Does not mean that. Well, what we both operate under is if you're a previous user, you get first priority that year. If a previous user stops using it, like some of our users stopped asking for it for whatever reason. We don't ask them why you're not asking for a permit. They just don't ask for it anymore. Then that time's available. If we get a new user from our township, that would be the next priority.
What happened to Shipley? They asked to consider it full day.
Shipley has to use it this year, and they are getting it this year. We haven't gotten to 2024 yet. With regards to the actual field usage and layout, if you lay out the hours, Lower Merion Township has it from 9 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. We don't permit anything from 9 a.m. until 3:30. The after school use, we could in the current agreement. The actual hours and the actual field uses is nearly 50-50. The entire railroad field is solely Haverford Township. One of the soccer fields is solely Haverford Township, and we split Monday through Friday in the evenings. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is Haverford on the baseball and softball. Tuesday and Thursday is Lower Merion. Saturdays and mostly Sundays is Lower Merion Little League until Eileen comes to me with a Haverford use that is needed on Sunday. We get Saturdays, you get Sundays, but right now Haverford doesn't have a use for it, so we're taking advantage of that opportunity. But as soon as that use comes up, we would discuss that and make sure that it's an equitable split. But there is a very near 50-50 split at any given time. I appreciate your opinion.
So Commissioner Davern, I just wanted to go back to what you said about the township use, going back to the original agreement. The use is allowed strictly for municipal use, Lower Merion Township, Haverford Township, for public community use. For you to say that there is no change when you are in fact transferring your municipal right to use the field to a school district that is absolutely exclusive to Lower Merion, that violates the intent of the original agreement as a public community use. As far as I understand it, Lower Merion is not offering to have Haverford students attend your schools. Lower Merion is not offering to have Haverford students play on your sports teams. It is absolutely an exclusive use. It violates the original intent of the playfield agreement. It is not what should be the norm going forward. If this is a temporary use with an expiration date, possibly. However, a $275,000 one-time investment for what sounds to me as though you are talking about an agreement in perpetuity for you to let your school district students use our field for a one-time payment of less than $300,000. In just a minute. Lower Merion School District needs to find its own land in its own township to service its own students. You should not be looking to our township, to our field to solve your school district's problems.
Thank you for that. This field has not been exclusively used by Haverford. I understand it's in Haverford. I absolutely understand that. This field has been shared by the two townships.
Townships.
Correct. It has been shared by the two townships that have both permitted the field. They've permitted it to Lower Merion Little League, to Haverford Soccer, to private schools. They have when we say a municipal use, it is not to me, what I'm hearing is that the only way to use this for a quote municipal use is to have the townships set up teams. That is not how it's ever operated. The townships don't, there is not a Haverford Township youth baseball team. There's Haverford Little League, there's Lower Merion Little League, there's Shipley School, there are all different schools. And these fields have, for decades, been permitted to schools, have been permitted to private schools, which I would argue are more exclusive than public schools. And if you're saying, if I can finish now, if you're saying that these are used for municipal purposes, to say that Lower Merion Public School is not a municipal purpose, to me, that there is no way that flies in the face of the purpose of the original intent, whether it's Lower Merion Public School or Shipley School. Using these fields, you have students from these townships. In this case, it's from Lower Merion Township for this portion of the field. Just like in other places, it's Haverford students using them. To me, that's exactly the purpose of this. This is for the students of these two townships, as it's always been to use these fields. And in this case, it happens to be Lower Merion School District for this portion of the fields.
And you're absolutely correct that private schools are more exclusive. However, if you can pay the freight, Haverford Township schools students can go to Shipley. Same thing with St. John Newman. That is not the case with Lower Merion School District. And the original agreement calls specifically for Lower Merion Township to have rights. Otherwise, you have no rights to this land. Lower Merion Township. Lower Merion Township is a separate legal entity from Lower Merion School District. You have different boards, you have different powers of taxation, you have different powers of eminent domain. You are not one and the same as a legal entity. Your rights extend only to the township, not to the school district. However, final question, will Lower Merion put in writing as part of this agreement that your school district, for whatever the term this will be for, will use no more than 2 fields for no more than 3 months, although we were told 2 months on the Zoom call, it apparently is 3 months per year for the sports of baseball and softball only, and for Blackrock Middle School students only, that you will never use this for anything other than what you have said tonight for your school district.
The short answer is yes. I have been asked by Lower Merion residents who still are looking for soccer and field hockey fields for Blackrock Middle School, said, well, if we're putting baseball, softball there, why don't we just put soccer there? And the answer is no, that's not the deal. We are not doing that. We are not looking to take over the fields. We are not looking to put soccer there. We are not looking for the fall. We are looking for this specific use. So simply the answer is yes.
Thank you very much.
This
Oh.
is Kathy for the BCA. One final question. As we all saw in the press, which I know we were all rather shocked to see, we heard nothing about this since 2022. All right. Take the mic, shot. So here's my question, and it's not for the Lower Merion folks, is what was presented in the press, and I gather it's the press, and they wrote it off of a news release that came out of Lower Merion, and one that came, although didn't think it was actually a news release, it's a letter from Haverford Township, is that this was described as a win for everybody. Now, I can see it's a win for Lower Merion. You got a big problem with BlackRock, and everybody knows about it, and I don't want to go into the details of it because you still haven't solved it, but we got a baseball solution so far, maybe. What is the win for Haverford Township? We get ownership of the field, which we could have seized at any time in the past 80 years, since the board of that association is dominated by Haverford Township residents, and they are empowered to transfer real estate. So in 1985, there could have been a board that said, we're switching it to Haverford Township ownership. So that's not a win when we get something we already had the right to. Read the articles of, it's in there, Article 2, Section 5. And so all we're getting is $275,000, and all the people here are going to worry about the traffic and the police enforcement and buses coming down their road, and overcrowding and maintenance and trash and bathrooms and all the things that we're going to worry about, which you say it's not increased use of the field, but anybody looking at that will say it is. What do we get?
So what you get as neighbors is accountability from your township. That is a win for us. You don't know, there's no owner of the field now. There's really no way to enforce what happens on the field now. The agreement is ad hoc and it goes between the two Parks and Rec departments. So what we get long-term is the ability to control and shape how we use the park. Not saying that to say we want to kick Lower Merion off in any way, but the way I looked at this as a win is that if we can get this investment for our community users, that is so much more than we are ever going to be able to do as a township alone. And so generosity, certainly of money, but also generosity of spirit. We share the field and it's for area children. And we're talking about some softball and baseball teams that want to use the fields just like they're being used now. So it's a win for me because we didn't have to sue Lower Merion to get the park in one way. And it's also a win because we're able to lock down some of these agreements that were not locked down in the past. Yeah. I think that's generally the win.
I think what bothers me most is, I love children. I love hearing kids play in Pleasant Park. I love hearing kids playing polo. You guys are asking for a concrete schedule of your school kids who have a very active athletic facility, whatever program. You're not acknowledging the fact that this is a community that loves their park and that you're not like, you're pretending that the community's not here wanting to use the park as a place to go for a walk or to sit in the park. These people that live right next to the park won't be able to take a nap on a May afternoon with the window open. I mean, it has real implications because kids will be screaming.
I know it because I live near kids. So acknowledge the other usage that's going on and, build a buffer, figure out how to build.
I think that's a really great point, and it's an important point. And while I'm obviously a commissioner in Lower Merion Township, I'm not in Haverford Township. I deal with these same issues, right? We have the same issues in our township, people who live near parks and people who are seeing increased traffic. All of these issues are not exclusive to Haverford. They're everywhere. They're in Lower Merion, they're in Radnor, they're across the whole region, across the whole country, frankly. When this whole thing started, when the discussion started, when all of this started, I was told that we permit that time, let's just permit it to Lower Merion School District. We can do it. We have that right to do it. That is not the right way to go about this. I didn't think that was the appropriate way. I didn't think we should do that. Nobody thought we should do that. We said, no, this isn't the right way to do it. We started talking with Laura about this idea. Just like you had mentioned, Haverford has had this power to kind of control this park. As a permit holder, we had the power to permit our pieces, but it's not the right way to do this. We are two neighboring communities, neighboring townships, and we have to respect each other. And, I didn't want to come in and just have somebody come out and say, why is there a Lower Merion School District written on that kid's jersey? What is going on? What are you doing behind closed doors and not telling us? And that led to this whole thing. And had we came out here and said, we want to build a third baseball field, there's a little corner where you can add another baseball field and we can do more. That's one thing. And I see your point that maybe in 1 year, instead of 14 games there's 18 games there. Maybe in another year, instead of 14 games there's 12 games there because we don't have 7th grade teams. Every year it's going to change, as Donna said. The use of this park, if it increases in a given year, it is a relatively minimal increase. There may be buses instead of cars. Kids right now are coming to this park to play baseball after school on weekdays. Instead of dropping off buses on Railroad, they're clogging up County Line with vans and cars. They're still coming to the park. They're not walking to the park. It's shifting it. I'm not arguing that it's not. It's changing things. That's why we want to engage the police and make sure it's done in the proper way. But this plan was never about adding more usage to the park, adding intensity of the usage of the park. It's changing the teams that are playing there. And that's why, as Donna said, it was really important for us to go to the schools that are using it and find alternatives for them. So we're not throwing them out on the street, because that's not what either of our townships are about. So there are shifts, there are changes, things are going to look a little different. And to compensate that is where this $275,000 from the school district came in. It's not a bribe. It's not it's not this, oh yeah, it's 275. There is an opportunity, and we've had a lot of discussions where Laura has pushed us and said, this part, forgetting this, and a lot of the problems that I've heard tonight are Saturdays and Sundays that are overused. Nighttime, there's a lot of issues that are beyond this afternoon use of baseball and softball during the spring season. But this is an opportunity to really look at this, look at the agreement, look at the maintenance of the park, look at the facilities of the park, and enhance them. And that's where Laura really pushed us to kind of say, hey, if we're going to do this, if we're going to work together, this park needs to be improved, regardless of whether it's Shipley or Lower Merion School District playing there. We need a better border on Polo. We need better seating areas. We need stormwater management issues. And that's where that came from. So my thought, and we can differ on it, people can say, no, you're doing X, Y, Z. The way I look at it is we're trying to maintain the use, change the teams that are using there, and in recognition of doing that, we want to make this a better park for everyone who uses it. Now, again, you may disagree with that, you may categorize it differently. That's how I've looked at it from day one. And I appreciate the partnership between the two townships and the partnership with Laura. She has not rolled over. She has not said, oh, do whatever you want. She's really been pushing us and trying to work on getting this to be a better park, because ultimately, I think that's what we all want. We all want a better polo field for everyone's use. So that's my answer to that question. Hopefully it's a good answer. If you don't like it, I understand, and I'm happy to have more conversations about it. Yeah.
David.
Here you go. Hold on one second.
As to the 275,000, and by the way, I appreciate everything you just said. And I appreciate hearing that there is no agreement. And there's not even a tentative agreement that could be enforced by either Lower Merion or Haverford Township. And I would like a commitment now that whatever is agreed to, quote unquote, agreed to in March or whenever, be in a proposal, and that there be opportunities for more input by this group, so it's not something we read about in the newspaper or get a notice, but something where we've had a chance to say, well, that's a great idea, that's a terrible idea. We'll think about it. And that whatever is agreed to in March also be a proposal, and that there be no binding, enforceable agreement negotiated behind closed doors, and nothing is enforceable until there's something reduced to a writing and voted on by the commissioners after opportunity for input by the community. So no tentative deals, no deal, it's either deal or no deal. So we'd like a commitment that there is no deal until the commissioners vote on a proposal, and that we have input in the proposal stages. It's very important to the process. Then you won't wind up with a meeting with 60 people showing up with pitchforks. So I want to go back to the 270.
So, yes. So the way, yes, I completely will definitely do what you just said, which is as things are put in writing and we come up with something that's going to be drafted, we should definitely share that with the neighborhood and have another meeting like this. And if we want to get more into the weeds at that time, we can. Dave's looking at me like, what are you doing right now? But yes, that's the kind of transparency that I am pushing for in this process, and that I want you to feel that you have buy-in and have a say in the future of the park and how you're going to use it. So that's the opportunity that I'm trying to kind of convey here.
You see how those articles in papers could undermine that whole thing?
I did actually learn something about the way it was announced, and I appreciate that.
Everybody, I want to just add very quickly to what my colleague Andy Gavrin said. I'm a commissioner in Lower Merion. I have been in this room before with my very good friend Andy Lewis, and I met a number of you before. I was tree planting with Andy, the trees that were referred to on the slope by the parking lot a number of years ago. And the cooperation between the two townships goes well beyond Polo Field. Our police have mutual aid agreements. Our volunteer fire companies have mutual aid agreements. Our commissioners work together and know each other. We value it. We share a long border. We jointly oppose billboards on Lancaster Avenue in Haverford Township. We as a township have had a lot of, you had your attorneys working on that case, and we have too. And so that's still an open issue. And we're committed to working with Haverford Township on that very important issue. There's a lot that our townships share together. And the commitment that your commissioner has made, that Laura has made from the beginning, has been transparency and listening. And we did it
on a Zoom call a year ago. This is a much better forum. I think we can all agree on that. Zoom calls are very difficult. And so I don't think there's ever been $275,000 put into the polo field in its history. So it's a significant one-time investment in polo field that Laura has insisted benefit the neighbors around the field. And so, and she's been negotiating and pushing hard for significant funding. So she's been acting in your interest from the beginning on this. And it was her insistence that we have this meeting tonight. Laura said this is essential to have. And so we'll keep answering your questions, but I just wanted to add to what Andy said. Thanks.
So I realize there are more questions. What I'd like to do is, give it another 5 or 10 minutes tops. If we've been here at it for 2 hours, the staff's been here all day. We got to let some people go home. I need to go pick up my son. So what I'm going to do is in about 10 minutes, we'll wrap it up. I'm certain there are elected officials who will stick around to talk to you individually one-on-one. So I see a really excited hand here.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, my name's Alicia Walker. I live below the letter A in Dayton Road, right on the park. I've been there 11 years. I moved in when my daughter was less than a year old, so I raised my child on the street. I just want to mention that there are about 10 other members of our street, and I love these people. We have a wonderful community. I am so proud to be part of the Dayton Road community. Yes, yay. We raise each other's children as if they're our own. And we also take care of this park as if it is our backyard. I regularly pick up trash. I sometimes actually pick up other people's dog poop because I don't want to live on a park that looks like crap. And I know my neighbors do the same thing. I pass out Band-Aids to people when their kids skin their knees. My daughter has been brought to my door by almost everybody in this room when she's skinned her knee or gotten upset. We just have a wonderful community. And so we're here because we care about it really deeply. My concerns have to do with a few things that maybe haven't been answered. One of them is bathrooms. I just will tell you that the porta potty plan in place right now is not sufficient. I regularly see people walk up to the porta potty with their children and then take their children. They don't go in, they open the door, they don't go in, and they go to the woods just behind the porta potty. And that happens all the time. So when a plan, I'm just going to be realistic. It sounds like you're probably going to move forward with this. And when you share a plan with us, please have a very clear statement about the porta potty plan. And not just for the 3 months that the middle school students are there, but we really need to know that that's going to be addressed because it's pretty awful. Secondly, there's only one water fountain that I know of, and it often doesn't work. It's over in the corner, the far right upper corner, it's about as far as you can get from your fields. And because of that, there's constantly a huge amount of plastic garbage, which many of us pick up. And that really needs to be addressed as well. I think it's probably useful to have some sort of very detailed conversation about the trash pickup that's currently in place, because not only is the trash not only picked up, but when it is picked up, it's not done in a careful way. It's not just the grass in the street, but it's bags of dog poop, old food, plastic bottles that are often strewn. So often after the trash has been picked up, I go out to pick up all the trash that has been left in the park. So there's some real issues along those lines. And I have one final suggestion. I would think it might be worth it, at least for the first couple of years, for the Lower Merion School District to pay to have a designated police officer on the day when there are games ticketing the street for cars. And for us to see if that helps alleviate at least the parent traffic. I do appreciate that you don't anticipate there'll be a lot of parents there, but it is really a problem for those of us who live on the park. For me, I think it's usually like weekends and Saturdays seems to be especially bad on Dayton Road. I sometimes have had to carry my groceries with when my daughter was like 3 years old, I had to carry my groceries dragging my daughter down the street like 2 blocks because our street was filled with other cars. And yes, you can call the police officers, but it sometimes takes them a long time to come. It wasn't going to help me be able to drop my groceries off. That's the sort of thing we put up with. So these are very real concerns, and I know that there's been a lot of passion tonight, but it's because every single one of these streets is a world. And we care so much about this park. So we appreciate all the ways you're trying to work with us, but we really need to see a written plan that gives us some confidence, not only about what's going to happen, but also that we're going to have some say in refining that plan over the years. And my real last suggestion, I think with every renewal, Lower Merion School District will need to put some additional funds into continuing to improve the park. It's I think actually pretty generous. I worked with Andy to put in the improvements to the playground a couple of years ago. So I have a sense of how far that amount of money would go, and it's actually not that far. And there are going to probably need to be continuing improvements. So if you could be open to that as a possibility, I think that really shows a sense of you're all joining this community, right? That we're really doing this together, and not just as a one-off, but for many, many years to come. So I love actually hearing games. I grew up in a city, didn't really want to move to the suburbs, but for me, living on this park is actually a wonderful way to be part of the community. And I really hope that you look at it as joining our community, not just as a one-off, but for the long haul. Thank you.
I want to take the last part here from someone who hasn't spoken yet.
I have a question that goes back to the beginning of all of this. Where are the Blackrock School playing this year that they cannot play there 2024? It seems that that's what opened this whole discussion. Why are they not fielding any teams this year because it's a new school? I can't believe they open the school and they have no athletic second half of the year. So, and secondly, I second what you said about annual funding or every biannual funding coming in from Lower Merion Township exclusively for maintenance for $275 is very short distance.
Commissioners, I did volunteer you to stick around a little bit.
That's about this year's school district.
This year's school district, again, we're not sure how many fields or teams are going to be fielding. It's the distance. I believe Commissioner Gavin tried to address that a little earlier in the evening. But the distance from the teams have to travel to their remote sites. We still don't know what teams they are fielding, whether baseball, softball, both. But as far as why Polo, it's the proximity to the middle school.
It's not nearby.
Understood.
It's the closest.
Thank you all for coming. I know the elected officials will stick around a little bit, and thank you very much to Eileen and Brian and Donna and Chief Viola for being here to support the conversation.